welcome back to Episode by Episode, a series of videos where I look through every single episode of a TV show and give my brief thoughts on them. This is still Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and we are up to Season 4. And apologies, I missed a week. Last week I'd been away. Things happened. Things got in the way. But yeah, hopefully back to weekly now. So Season 4 of Buffy is one that is very much a transitional year for the show. Angel's gone, Cordelia's gone, the high school's gone. The show moves into college and doesn't stay there for a huge amount of time, but released there for this season and a little bit of 5. So it's very much a year of change. And for a lot of people, this was where Buffy lost some of its magic. And I can kind of see that to a degree with this season at least. I don't think it's a particularly great season, but for some reason it's one that whenever I rewatch it, I enjoy a little bit more. So I think over time this season's aged a lot better than I expected it to. I think it's a bit more hit and miss than the show had been in for a little while up to this point, but it's still good. There's still good episodes here. There's just a couple of terrible ones thrown in as well, but we'll get to them. Let's start at the beginning then with the Season 4 premiere, The Freshman. So this was our reintroduction to the world of Buffy and our introduction to college life. And I think for the most part, this one kind of succeeds at showing where the show's going to be going. I don't think it's a perfect episode. The character of Sunday, the villain in this one, wasn't one that I really connected with. She didn't seem powerful enough to be able to take on Buffy the way that she does. And there's a lot of, I guess it could be that Buffy was out of her comfort zone at that point. She wasn't quite with it as much as she normally was. Everything was changing for her, so it makes sense that she's not fighting at 100% capacity. But yeah, I didn't quite believe that Sunday would take Buffy down and hurt her as much as she did. So that took me out of things a little bit, but it's still a great way of showing where the show is going to go from now on. I think the college setting is great. It really feels very different to Sunnydale High. Everything feels different, everything feels bigger, and Joss Whedon focuses on the right sort of things at college life. Buffy having a horrible teacher within the first sort of 20 minutes of the episode. How Willow takes to this a lot better than Buffy does. There's different things that he looked at and different aspects of college life that I think I've never been to an American college, so I don't know quite how accurate it was, but it seemed realistic to me at least. I think Xander has some issues this season. I think he's poorly used, particularly in the first half. Saying that, I liked him here though. I like the fact that he went on this road trip and it all went very wrong. It's very Xander-like. So I appreciated his involvement there. And Giles as well, he's another one who's just kind of put to the wayside a bit in Season 4. With him, though, he's kind of meant to be. You kind of understand that. That's part of his story, that he doesn't really know what to do with himself now. He's A, no longer a watcher, and B, the school's gone. Doesn't even have his library anymore. And we get the first look at that here, that he's not quite as in with the gang as he once was. He's got his own stuff going on, and that's nice to see for Giles. And of course, by the time the episode ends, everybody comes back together again and helps Buffy, as they always would. But yeah, it sets those seeds that the group's going to go through some changes this year, and they may not be as close for the whole season as they had been. Right from the off, we start to see little hints of that. Living conditions. I don't really like living conditions, and I don't really know why that is either. I think a large part of that is down to the character of Kathy. I found her performance to be... The thing is, Kathy was meant to be irritating in this. That was the point of the character. She was meant to be very, very annoying, but she was so annoying that I couldn't enjoy the episode. So the performance I found to be a little bit too over the top. The writing didn't seem as sharp as it normally does from Buffy. And yeah, this is an episode that just didn't quite land for me. It's got some nice moments. Sort of Oz's comment when Buffy breaks the bench. I love that. Miss Oz, it's almost gone. But it seemed like the real definition of filler episode. There was nothing really to it at all. It was very one and done. And I can't say I really bought everybody thinking that Buffy was going crazy either, because they've known Buffy for so long now that they should have been aware that there's something else going on. Again, that just felt a little bit forced to me. Living Conditions, an episode I've never really loved all that much. And perhaps surprisingly, I didn't really love The Harsh Light of Day that much either. It's good to have Spike back. I think Spike was a much needed kick in Season 4. When he comes back into it properly, it's great. But his first episode, I remember when I first watched it, I was a little bit concerned about where they were going to go with Spike, because he was such a memorable character before. And when he's come back into this one and he's paired with Harmony, which is a pairing I never really got on board with, I found him to be a little bit diluted. He wasn't really as funny as he used to be. He wasn't as menacing as he used to be. And that continues on, but they find a balance with Spike, I think, quite quickly to show this new side of the character. But here, he's still meant to be the old Spike, and there was something lacking, I think. The Gem of Amara is a nice idea, like vampires can go into the sun. Obviously, it continues on to Angel, which is a series I probably will do this for at some point. And then there's everything going on with Parker. And I I don't know, I'm a bit torn on the whole Buffy Parker situation, because maybe it's because we see Buffy kind of moping about the whole Parker thing more than we saw Angel. And yeah, that's kind of fair because there's been a time jump, so it makes sense, but I didn't think we needed to see Buffy going through this at this point. And I just didn't think that Parker was the kind of person that she'd fall for anyway. So, and again, that's just another part of the episode I couldn't invest in. I loved Anya and Xander, though. Sort of those two together, so much fun. From graduation day when we saw them to now. It's a great reintroduction for Anya, who becomes a much bigger focus from this point on. So yeah, it's got some things going for it, but this episode as a whole, just one I never really got on with. For itself, though, I love this episode. One of my favourite Buffy moments is when you get the fear demon appear at the end, and he's all built up, and he's just this tiny little fella that Buffy squashes with her feet. It's a very Buffy moment. It's a very moment that sums up this show, how silly it can be, while it's also being quite scary, and I think it does it really, really well in this one. And there's some great things going on. The whole haunted house concept, to make something like that fresh, is very difficult to do. There's been so many haunted house stories over the time, but Buffy does it really well with Fear itself. Because again, it blends that comedy extremely well with what's going on, with all the scary stuff that's happening. Anya in a bunny outfit, as well as Xander Giles with his giant hat. So many just silly moments thrown in here that just make it such a fun episode. And it's not just a fun fluff piece either, because there's great character moments in here. I mean, take Xander. He's so worried about losing his friends and becoming nothing to them because he's not gone to college with them. And the thing that happens to him is he becomes invisible. They literally can't see him. So this episode does have quite a few layers to it as well. And certainly the best episode of Season 4 up to this point. I know we're only 4 episodes in at this stage. But yeah, really good episode. Love Fear itself. And from one I love to Be a Bad. This episode. Is there anybody that's actually a big fan of this episode? If you love Be a Bad, let me know in the comments, because I've never met anybody who liked this episode at all. I don't think I've even spoken to anybody who liked it. I don't think it's the worst episode of the show. I mean, it's a contender to be on a worst list, certainly. But there's certainly worse episodes that come to mind. But it's pretty bad for the most part. And the main problem for me is that they just hit the metaphor so hard on the head. There's no subtlety to this at all. Just alcohol's bad. That's it. That's all we got. Alcohol's bad. And there was some fun that could have been got from it. People reverting to being cave people because they've drunk too much. But that could have been funny. That could have been fun. Instead, it's really embarrassing. It's one of those episodes of Buffy that if you're watching it with somebody on the first time, you might try and skip past and pretend doesn't exist, because it's awful. The only problem is it has some Parker-related things in there. So there's moments that you do need to see. And that's one of the highlights of the episode, I think. The Willow and Parker stuff. Alison Hannigan's great in those scenes. I love Willow in that. I love that she's just playing Parker. And then seeing Buffy whack him over the head with the club as well. That's admittedly fun. But there's all of the cave people stuff is just so cringy. So awkward to watch. The performances aren't great. I don't like Be a Bad. And it also shows us what we're going to be doing with Xander a lot this season, which is where he just goes from job to job to job. It almost becomes... I mean, Power Rangers Turbo did that with Bulk and Skull, so I thought Buffy's obviously a little bit further above that kind of storytelling. It's a problem with Xander this year. He just kind of flits about where he needs to be, and it's just, conveniently, here's a bartender on an episode about alcohol. Wild at Heart is an episode that broke me emotionally because I love Oz. I love that character, and I was so sad to see him go, and it was done in such an emotional way as well. The performances from Alison Hannigan and Seth Green, those two nailed it in this episode. They nailed every single scene that they were in, and they had some serious, upsetting stuff to work with, but they absolutely blew me away, the pair of them. Nice that Oz's departure is down to him being a werewolf, because quite often that side of Oz gets forgotten about. It comes up every now and then when it needs to, but the fact that he does turn into a werewolf, it's not always the main point of the story. It's always something that's at the forefront of the character, but it makes sense to give him a departure that is to do with that. That being said, I think this would have been better placed a little later in the season, because we're only 6 episodes into Season 4 at this stage, and there wasn't enough time to build up this whole Oz-Veruca situation. There's only been a couple of episodes where we've seen them exchange glances with one another, so there's been little hints here and there, but to really bring that to the forefront and to get it all wrapped up in sort of 42 minutes didn't quite work. I think it needed a little bit more time, needed a few more episodes just to keep building that up, so it made a little bit more sense, so it felt like it got there naturally, rather than an episode that was just put in there because they were losing Seth Green at this point and they needed to write him out. So that's really one of my only big problems with this, is that there wasn't enough background to it. The episode itself, I think, is really good. As I say, one of my favourite Seth Green performances, I think, from this episode. Yeah, this upset me. This upsets me even on a rewatch. Just watching Oz drive away, really sad stuff. The Initiative. So, as for the whole Initiative thing, a lot of people didn't like the Initiative. They didn't think it was a particularly good overall big bad, particularly the character of Adam, and I think it'll be the next video we'll get to him. But I kind of liked them. I thought it was a very different thing to do for this show. It was very fresh. I'd say felt very much like this was a show that was trying new things and going in new directions, and the Initiative, I think, did that really well. The idea that there's this whole army, effectively, fighting demons is just such a good one. And we've seen them kind of pop up in the last few episodes. I mean, the last episode they took Spike, so we've got hints that they're there, but it's so cool seeing them all for the first time like this. And it sets up for some really fun moments between Buffy and Riley as well. And to say a few things on Riley, I don't hate him. I quite like Riley, to be honest. He's one of those characters that seems to get bashed, I think, kind of undeservedly. I mean, he's not the most exciting character on the show, but there was more to him. I like the fact that he was just this everyday farm boy guy, and then we find out, no, actually he's fighting demons too, and then what goes on within him in the first half of season 5 I thought was really interesting. So yeah, I quite like Riley. And he and Buffy together are a lot of fun in this one. That scene of them in the park where they're both trying to get rid of the other one so they can go and fight the demon, not realising they're both going to go fight them, they're just trying to protect each other. I like that. It's a fun little interplay between the two of them. I thought really worked. Spike is great in this one as well. As I say, I wasn't a huge fan of his first episode back. I think he's brilliant here when he gets out of the Initiative, and those scenes between him and Willow as well are some of my favourites. The favourite interaction I think between those two characters is so much fun. And this has got some good action as well. I enjoy the Initiative siege on the dorm hall. I think that's a really well done sequence. So yeah, this is an episode I think works pretty well. It sets up the Initiative, it sets up who Professor Walsh is, gives us everything between Buffy and Riley, sort of the start of that thing, really progressing into what it becomes. Yeah, really good episode. Pangs. I mean, Pangs is fine. It has things that I like. Xander with his syphilis is quite good fun. That's a fun sentence. But this was billed as the first crossover into Buffy between Buffy and Angel. Angel just had one, and this is the first time that Angel came back to Sunnydale again. So I remember when it was about to air, I was really excited to see what would happen when he came back, to see him and Buffy together again. Sadly, he doesn't interact with her at all, and that does set up for the Angel part of this crossover pretty well, but it's a bit disappointing on the Buffy half. There's some interesting things at work though, like the whole Shumash tribe thing is, say it's interesting, it works, it's not a bad episode, but it's just one that's kind of largely forgettable. So there are some fun moments, the bear attack is particularly good, and particularly Spike's "you made a bear" line, love that. But overall it's one that I just find to be a little bit messy. It never seems to be sure of what this episode wanted to be going into it. Some good moments, but yeah, pretty forgettable. Something Blue is a really fun episode. Seeing James Masters and Sarah Michelle Gellar get to act with each other the way they do in this one, this is an episode I've rewatched quite a few times, and I still get a kick out of both of those performances. Both of them being so sickly sweet and in love with each other when normally we just have the two of them at each other's throats. So much fun. And everybody's reaction to Buffy and Spike getting married is just as ridiculous as it should be. They're all shocked, they're all stunned. Giles in particular I think has the best response to this. He's blinded in this episode. And yeah, it's an episode that just makes me laugh a lot. It makes me laugh so many times throughout it, while also having some serious stuff at work as well. I mean, Willow causes all this because of her grief over Oz. And because she's still so sad about him leaving, she accidentally causes all of this to happen, to the point where she even gets an offer to become a vengeance demon. So this also shows how much Willow's progressing in the world of magic, that she can pull off spells like this even if she doesn't mean to. Hush. Now, I had a conversation with somebody on Stardust quite recently, I think it was in the last couple of weeks. I'm on Stardust, by the way, at Joe Julian's, if you are on there. Follow me, let's talk on Stardust. And we were talking about the new Predator movie, and there is a reason I'm discussing this now. I said that I didn't like that it was too funny, it was too light-hearted, when it should have been sort of quite a horror movie and a scary one. And he was like, I don't think that horror and humour, or scary and humour, can blend together correctly. And I was like, well, there's a lot you have to watch then, because it most certainly can. And the first thing that came into my head when I said that wasn't just Buffy as a whole, it was this particular episode of Buffy, which I think is certainly top 5 Buffy episodes, without question. This is an incredible 44 minutes of television, absolutely incredible. And I love how it all began as a concept as well. Joss Whedon being told that the most successful thing about the show was the dialogue. So he went, okay, let's take the dialogue out for a whole episode. And it's just amazing how well it works. The performances from the cast here are so good, all having to get by on reactions rather than actual dialogue this time. And nobody lets the side down. Nobody lets the team down. They're all as good as each other in this one. The Gentlemen are the creepiest villains, not just that Buffy's had, they're up there in my creepiest villains ever, I think. Just that shot of one of them gliding past the window while Olivia's there at Giles' apartment. Just, every single time that one gets to me. And it's also very funny. The whole presentation that Giles does while they can't speak and Buffy does a moment makes me laugh a lot. But there's lots of comical moments in this. Spike swearing at Xander. In fact, everything between Xander and Spike. Xander and Anya, and they're communicating that they're going to go and have sex. So many funny moments in this, but also it's terrifying. It's creepy. The action's really good. If you ever want to see an episode of Buffy that can blend so many different tones all together, this is the one. This is the one to watch. This shows how great Buffy can be and what it's capable of doing. And yes, it's a gimmick episode. The gimmick is that it's mostly silent throughout the whole thing. Nobody's speaking. But at the same time, there's a lot going on that affects what happens. Buffy and Riley see each other as who they actually are for the first time. Willow and Tara meet. It's the first time we get Tara, and what an episode for her to debut in. So there's a lot going on this one, but it doesn't feel messy. It doesn't feel like there's too much in there. It feels like the exact amount of time, the correct amount of time has been spent on each one of these little subplots going on. And yeah, outstanding episode of this show. So last episode for this video then is Doomed. Doomed's alright. Look, Doom's an okay episode. Not one of my favourites. I love seeing the school again. I love the fact that we went back to Sunnydale High and it's just this charred mess of where the school used to be. I enjoyed that. There's a thrill of seeing that school again. And I like that the Hellmouth has come into play. I like that there's demons trying to reopen it and it's up to everybody to stop it. And there are some good moments in this. There's some good moments scattered throughout. Suicidal Spike. Spike, who now can't bite anybody, finds out that he can actually hurt demons. It's just humans he can't hurt. And he uses that to become a part of the team, as it were. Trying to rally Willow and Xander at the end to go out brawling. It's a great way to use Spike, I think. To have that, to force him to become part of the team rather than making it seem like the character's just decided to. Like, he's got no choice. He wants to commit violence. He loves being violent. And this is the only way he can do it, so I liked that. Everybody finds out about Riley in this one as well. They all now know he's in the initiative, and there's a great little Riley and Spike exchange where Spike tries to put on a fake accent to throw Riley off the scent that he's one of his escaped prisoners. So yeah, there's a lot of good moments in Dune. There's a lot of things I like about it, but for some reason it's just not one of those episodes that holds up all that well to me. It's not one that I'm ever keen to rewatch, despite the fact there are elements to it that I do enjoy. And that's mainly, I think, because the central plot of this one, reopening the Hellmouth, while it's nice to see, I don't think it's quite as grandiose as it needed to be. Like, whenever I see the Hellmouth come into play, it's a massive thing in the world of Buffy. It's the whole concept of the show that's this Hellmouth. And here, yeah, it doesn't feel as serious as it should. Much like in the Zeppo, where we had another sort of thing going on where that was a side story, this doesn't feel any more significant than that, even though it's the A-plot, even though it's the main plot of the episode. So yeah, certainly not a bad episode, but not one that I'm ever eager to go and rewatch again. So they're my thoughts on the first 11 episodes of Buffy Season 4. The back half of Season 4 will be coming next week, but let me know what you think about all of these episodes in the comments below. Let's talk Buffy. Tell me what you think of each of them. Give me some ratings if you want. Let's talk Buffy. Do hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more. And also in the comments as well, let me know what show you'd like me to do next. I've had a few suggestions already and I'm just kind of trying to whittle down a list of possible options to do next. So yeah, let me know some of the shows you think I should cover. Look out for more reviews coming soon, including A Star Is Born, which should be up towards the end of the week. Thank you very much for watching and I'll see you on the next video.